evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Parkway School Board, January 9th, 2013. I'd like to ask the audience to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Mrs. Calanda.
Mrs. Applebaum?
Here.
Mr. Applebaum?
Here.
Mr. Jacob?
Here.
Mr. Major?
Here.
Mrs. Milderman?
Here.
Dr. Ciacchino?
Here.
Mrs. Feldman?
Here. Thank you. Tonight, the Board of Education is recognizing an outstanding Parkway citizen, Mr. Al DeSimone. In addition, we'll hear from our superintendent, Dr. Keith Marty, about School Board Recognition Week. First, I'd like to invite Mr. Toby McQuarrie, Social Studies Coordinator, to introduce Mr. DeSimone.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be able to stand here and be part of this recognition for Mr. DeSimone. I've had the opportunity to get to know him and his sweetheart over the past couple of months, and it's been a special experience. A few words about Al. Al DeSimone's been reading and collecting books on history since he was a student. He typically arrived at school long before his first class began, and then one day in 1954, wandered into the library. As he began to peruse the stacks, he came upon a book titled The Second World War. He was hooked. Daily visits to the library soon became routine for Mr. DeSimone. After graduation, he continued to read and began to acquire his own library, which had grown to an impressive collection of over 1,500 books. To ensure that his lifelong love of reading with a distinct focus on history could be shared with future generations, Al decided to call Parkway. His intent was to donate his entire collection to the history teachers in our district. In all, and we went to his home, we packed 50-plus cartons of books and made them available to social studies teachers during our annual social studies conference in November. Mr. DeSimone is being recognized by Parkway tonight for his contribution to the development of historical understanding for Parkway teachers and students alike. And I'd like to invite Al forward to receive this certificate of appreciation and to shake the hands of the members of the board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this honor. But it was my honor to do what I did. You know, like I told Toby, I saw on the paper or in the internet, some teacher someplace, I think up east, was giving her students a pop quiz. She asked a young lady what the meaning of the Battle of the Bulge was. Her response was, it had to do with obesity. And I got thinking, like my wife said, when I go, either the books are gone or there's a big bonfire at the house. So I just thought, let me see the best way to get rid of them. And I thought of Parkway. That's when I talked to Dr. Marty, who put it in the capable hands of Carol Conan, who then put it in Toby McQuarrie's hands. And when they came by my house to take a look at it in advance of boxing, when they walked in the room, you talk about people's jaw dropping and eyes bulging. They just couldn't believe it. And I says, believe it, they're yours. And then 2 weeks later, that's when they came by and boxed up, like you said, over 50 boxes. And I'm just enjoying watching them, loading everything up. But again, it was really my pleasure to see some good use come to Parkway School District. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Dr. Marty to the podium.
Thank you very much, and Al, once again, thank you very much, and we really appreciate being able to honor you tonight. Well, tonight we have a very special recognition. The Missouri School Boards Association has designated January 20th to the 26th, 2013 as School Board Recognition Week. It's coming up here very shortly. We are pleased to recognize the school board members for volunteering their time and energy to providing the best education possible for our students and our citizens, and their continued dedication to excellence within Parkway. Their pledge to students, our school district, our whole community, and our commitment certainly has earned them this honor. I want to just emphasize when we talk about volunteering that our board members truly are our volunteers, and they put in literally hours of time in this position. The mission of the Parkway School District is to ensure that all students are capable, confident, and curious learners who understand and respond to the challenges of an ever-changing world. And we work each day along with our board to make this mission a reality. So at this time, we're very, very excited and pleased as our superintendent's action team to present a gift and a certificate to our honored board members tonight. And I get the pleasure to start. I just want to basically tell you, board members, I think last year we started this little routine of giving you a book. It's entitled The Ball. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's a quick read. I read it, and I'm a slow reader, about a half hour. And I think you're going to enjoy the message in here. There's an educational message. And then along with that, we're going to present from the Missouri School Board Association to each of you a certificate that honors you for your dedicated leadership for public education and continued service to the children of our community. And I get to start with the board president, being the superintendent. And it's my pleasure, Beth, to recognize you. We're so lucky and honored to have you as our president this year. And I just want to say, from a personal standpoint, you're so accessible, you work so hard, you are out there in the schools. I think our staff, from our teachers to all our staff, really appreciate your dedication, your knowledge, your willingness to really be an advocate for our whole staff and our students and our community. So thank you very much for your service.
Well, I have the pleasure of presenting a token of our appreciation to Dee Mogerman. Dee is currently serving as vice president, but as you know, she's also the longest serving member of the current board and has not only served as a president once, but twice, which is a feat in and of itself. I met Dee first when I came to the district 13 years ago. Dee volunteered at every level in the district. I would say there's probably very few school board members in the state of Missouri that understands education in Missouri like Dee does. We appreciate your leadership, your wisdom, and your dedication to our kids over the years. And we're just so grateful that you've hung with us. I know it's a lot of extra time and energy, but we really appreciate it. So thank you, Dee.
It's my pleasure to recognize board member Tom Applebaum. Tom, we really appreciate all your efforts. Tom has served on the board since 2010, He's been a great supporter of our efforts and a great advocate for the energy efficiency and our efforts to more green efforts in the district. He also has an uncanny knack for being just on time to everything. He gets there just in the nick of time. But and Tom really recently, some of the great efforts were not involving the school board, but the efforts to organize and be a founder of the Welcome Home Heroes Parade that started here in St. Louis by you and one of your friends, and has gotten national recognition and gone beyond St. Louis. So thank you for all your efforts here and all the other things you do as well. Tom.
I have the pleasure to thank Kim Applebaum for your service. Kim joined our board last April, and what a learning curve it has been, from the acronyms to the names to the structures, the people, the programs. And Kim, I've enjoyed being a part of that journey as you've served on the liaison group that I work with. We appreciate all that you have done to balance the time of being a band mom with your 2 young boys that are in Parkway, with your time to help serve us in our district through your volunteerism. Thank you very much.
I'm very pleased to recognize Mr. Chris Jacobs tonight. I feel very fortunate to have been able to work with him for the past year. He is past year and a half, actually. He's a former board president. He's a successful businessman, but I think he's probably most known for his sense of humor, and he's been able to keep a smile on our faces through some pretty gloomy times over the past year. So thank you for your service.
I have the opportunity to thank Dr. Sam Sorrentino for being a board member. When I came a year ago, my first memory of Sam is that everyone I met said Sam was my principal. And so I kind of thought of Sam as Mr. Parkway. No matter where I went, I found someone that had some tie. So I appreciated as a new administrator that he was on my liaison committee last year, and he was always ready to try anything that I came in and had an idea about. He'd said, well, let's try it and see how that works, or have you thought about this? And having another educator to have ideas and bounce ideas back and forth has been very helpful. So thank you for all your service to Parkway, and especially to me.
Good evening, and I have the privilege of recognizing Bruce Major for his service on the Board of Education. He's been with us since 2008 on the board, and he served as our president in 2010, 2011. And Bruce and I go way back, and I know you don't want me to stand at the microphone for a long time. And even before Bruce began serving on the board, he was serving our Parkway community in many aspects. I consider Bruce a Parkway dad, a Parkway husband, a Parkway board member, and a Parkway leader, and a Parkway servant. And thank you very, very much for your service to all of our kids, and I mean all of our students in Parkway. Thank you.
And you forgot a Chelsea Watson fan.
I'll just finish this up, and congratulations, by the way, to all of you, and thank you again so much. And I just want to finish by providing a proclamation to President Feldman. I'm not going to read all the whereases, but this is from our governor, Jay Nixon, who is signed on a proclamation of the Recognition Week again, and urges all Missourians to recognize school boards as they strive with their communities to improve public schools through their quality leadership. And I think that's particularly true here in Parkway. We really have a quality board, and that works very, very closely with our community. So, President Feldman, I'll present this to you as well.
Thank you, everybody. Speaking of school board members, we have an upcoming election on April 2nd. There are 2 director positions open at that time. So far, we have 5 filers. The 2 open board positions are that of Mr. Applebaum and Dr. Sorrentino. And I'm pleased to say that both of them have filed for re-election, as well as Dan Brodsky, Annette Reed, and Jennifer Clifton. And if any of those other members are here or candidates are here, could you please stand up? Well, we look forward to seeing them at a future meeting. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now we are going to move along to additions, corrections, and modifications to the agenda 4.0. A modification was made to 10.13, approval of 2013 Parkway Legislative Platform, with the elimination of the 3rd bullet point, school finance, and the revision of the 1st bullet point under early childhood education to read, quote, restore and increase funding for early childhood education programs, including parents as teachers, through new or increased revenue streams without reducing current or proposed K through 12 funding, unquote. So when we get down to 10.13, we will be voting to approve that language. 5.0 citizen statements. We've got one this evening, and it's Mrs. Joanna Bozeman, who's our PNEA president. I'd like to ask you to recite your name and your address for the record.
I'm Joanna Bozeman. I reside at 701 Cedar Bluff Court in Manchester. President Feldman, Vice President Mogerman, members of the board, Dr. Marty, and Ms. Calanda. Volunteers is a precious resource we cannot afford to lose. Someone else said, those who can do, those who can do more, volunteer. On behalf of all Parkway teachers, we thank you for all that you do to support teachers and students in Parkway. I'm proud to say that our teachers know who you are because they see you in their schools, you talk to them when you are in the schools, and you show them that you care. We appreciate the collaborative environment that you've encouraged and modeled, the time that you give, and for that and more, we say thank you, and we again applaud all of you this evening. Thank you. I didn't bring gifts.
Your presence is gift enough. Thank you, Joanna. 6.0, call for executive session. There is none. 7.0, approval of agenda for January 9th, 2013. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for January 9th, 2013?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 8.0 resolutions, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 21st. May I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution for Dr. Martin Luther King Day?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Before we get to communications, I'd like to say that if anybody feels like they need to get up and go home and enjoy the rest of their evening at home, you're very welcome to do that. We're glad to have you, but if you have other plans, we excuse you.
We won't be offended.
Yeah, we don't take offense.
You guys have seen the exciting part of the meeting. It kind of goes downhill from here on.
Thank you.
9.01, update on Board of Education filing. We've already done that. So just want to say the filing closes on Tuesday, January 15th at 5 p.m. at the Administration Building. So that is next Tuesday, I believe. 9.02, calendar of meetings. The next meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for Wednesday, February 6, 2013 at Central Middle School at 7:30 p.m. 9.02, Board Liaison Reports. Do we have any this evening? Yes.
On Tuesday, December 8th, I was honored to be asked by Liz Morrison to be a judge, one of 4 judges in her government class, is that correct? Government class, with Paul Tandy, Toby McQuarrie, and Jennifer Stanfill, for the Citizens Speak Advocacy Project. It was a really interesting thing to see. The kids in groups researched different programs where they could volunteer, and they made their cases of why this is the best place to volunteer and what this organization does, and we had to vote on the best presentation. We were supposed to vote on one, and we actually had 2 that we thought were really outstanding. But it was a great experience, and I think we all really enjoyed it, and the kids were fabulous. So it was a really fun time. And thank you, Liz.
Anybody else? We had about 2 weeks off there in the middle of the month, and I think everybody took, Bruce has one? Go ahead, Bruce.
Just a quick one. We did have the PACCD executive meeting on the Friday after our last board meeting, so December 14th. I thought a uniquely constructive and sure feels to me like the trajectory is positive on that front. So my compliments to Dr. Marty and the rest of the staff that were involved in that, and also the announcement that their holiday party is this Friday night. So of course our mid-year board retreat is Saturday morning, so that may dampen some of the frivolity, but Meg Marion will be hosting, so if you don't have it on your calendar yet, you oughta. So.
Since it's a sports theme, can we come Saturday with the same attire?
Sure. Why not?
Green Bay Packer jersey.
You're planning.
I only have a cheesehead thing, so.
Does anybody else have a liaison report? What I was going to say is we had about 2 weeks off, so we were having difficulty kind of getting out there because there was nobody to go visit. But we're all get busy going back to concerts and plays and visiting schools and doing all that kind of stuff in the months to come. So we're going to go now to 10.0 action items. May I have a motion and a second? Is there anything that needs to be pulled to action or for discussion? Okay, sorry. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They pass 7-0. Thank you. So 11.0 action items, there are none. 12.0 reports, there are none. And this is the part we've all been waiting for, 13.0 work session. I'd like to call on Desi Kirchhoffer, Deputy Superintendent, and Liz Morrison, Coordinator of Staff Development, to discuss Goal 4, Professional Learning Communities.
And I'd also like to invite our distinguished panel members down at this time. Come join us. Given the nature of this initiative, really we have some guests right up front that'll be part of a panel discussion tonight, but really, again, given the nature of the initiative, everyone in the room is really part of this program and our professional learning communities. And just a reminder, it all stems from Mission for All, and so that's why we're here. And all our goal areas, including Goal 4, stem from this mission. A reminder that one of our measurable objectives dealing with strong professional communities was that all staff members will have a positive impact on student achievement. And so that will be our focus tonight as we discuss the impact on our students and the work that our teachers and staff are doing. Just some brief reminders. You've all seen these before, but just some quick reminders. The 5 questions that are typically addressed in the collaborative learning teams. What do we want our students to understand? How will we know if they understand it? How will we respond when they do not understand? And how will we respond if they already understand it? and how will we teach to ensure student understandings? And that's the part where our teachers meet collaboratively and share their best practices. Some of the big ideas of the PLCs is the focus is on learning, whereas before it might have been on teaching and instruction, building a collaborative culture, and the focus on student results. So really what we were talking about in a calendar that you approved a year ago was a need to change the way we allocate time for professional learning. So we're going to meet more frequently, analyze real-time data, and apply that in the classrooms in a timely manner, and create a culture of collaboration focused on the individual student needs, and then quick, actionable strategies to change instruction and address student performance. So we were looking at a better way to collaborate. I'm going to turn it over to Liz for just a brief point here, and use that. Yep, there you go.
Yay. And you guys, I have to say, my mom and dad, you know how we have the numbers watching? My mom and dad are in Gold Canyon, Arizona, and they're watching tonight, so I promised I'd wave. And also RJ, so the two people watch. No. But, so anyway, traditional PD days. As you guys know, in the past, for as long as I've been in Parkway, and for probably as long as the longest people in the room have been in Parkway, we had traditional PD days where they were infrequent. We had them 5 times per year. They were a full day with no school. We worked on best practices, curriculum planning, school and district meetings were held those days, and these are very important, but they didn't really focus on individual students. So with the PLC days, these are more frequent. They're monthly. They're short and focused. They're 2 hours. They're based on student data. There's conversations about how to help each individual child succeed. They focus on best practices. They're immediately actionable, and they're focused on results. We still do traditional PD days because that's how you get new ideas out, but the PLC days really focus on our mission about all. And so I'm not a big numbers girl. But for this particular case, the numbers were really important. And on the first late start day in September, I was in a PLC at South High, but that whole morning I was worrying, did the buses all make it to pick up the kids? And they all did. And I worried like, oh, will the meals all turn out okay? They all did. There was no complaints when it was over. It was kind of a letdown because everything was so successful. And I mean that in a really positive way. You know, it was like, oh my goodness, all this worry, and it went great. And these are the numbers, you guys. On that day and every late start day, we have 249 school-based teams that meet. We have 82 multiple school PLCs that meet. We have 4 multiple school professional learning communities that are made up of our nurses. We have 29 monthly collaborative team leader meetings times 6 months. I was going to ask Amy to do the math for us. Nathan looked at the numbers because originally people were like, oh, on those late start days, what's attendance going to look like? Well, on late start days, we have more kids than on other comparable days that come to school. Nathan made the comment, maybe they want to get more bang for their buck, you know, if they're going to be off, but the numbers are high. We're at 96% on those late start days. For our teachers, we have a low, teachers don't call off sick, which is awesome, but on our late start days, it's even lower than usual. So those were really exciting numbers to have. At our PLC Institute, we had 232 early childhood, elementary, special educators, and administrators who attended, and then we also had 281 special secondary teachers and administrators who attended the secondary. They were on the same days, we kind of divided them up, early childhood and elementary, and then we had the secondary, which was middle school and high school. So by the numbers, our PLCs are very successful, but it's just not about the numbers, it's about the people who make it happen, and I'm going to turn it back to Des.
Thank you, Liz. I neglected to say hello to Liz's family, so hello and welcome, and the rest of the viewing audience. RJ, don't stay up too late tonight. Make sure you do your homework. 5th grade can be tough. So we did, you've heard the big picture presentations at board meetings, at Project Parkway meetings, PTO, and other venues. But tonight we wanted to dig deeper at the level of understanding regarding the professional work taking place. So much like the doctors, lawyers, and other professions that collaborate, tonight we've assembled a panel of educators who are doing and witnessing the amazing work of our professional learning community structure. So in just a second here, I'm going to have each panel member introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask for a brief comment so we can get to the question and answer session with the board. But a brief comment, panel members, that you introduce yourself and then just tell us the impact that the professional learning communities and the collaborative teams that you work in has had on you or your students. So the work you do in your collaborative team or with the students you work with. And with that, Jeremy, can you get that one and pass the microphone down? This one's on. We'll start at that end. So if you want to do an introduction.
Sure.
Go straight into the question and answer session.
My name is Amy Gerken-Coates, and Dr. Sarantino was my principal. Professional learning communities have really helped to focus what we are doing. We know that we meet collaboratively with our teams each and every week, but when we have the late start days, we come together as an entire school with our data boards in front of us and have that information so that we're making sure that all of the stakeholders, our special ed teachers, our reading instruction or interventionists, and the classroom teachers are all on the same page.
And my name is Erin Hamilton. I'm a third grade teacher at Riverbend. And I would say the greatest impact in third grade has been on our students. It's extremely powerful for our kiddos to know exactly what they need to be learning, what their goals are. And the best part is seeing the success that when they reach their goal and how excited they are. So I would say in third grade, that's been our greatest success this year.
Hi, I'm Susan Doring from Southwest, and I'm the instructional coach. I've been traveling from collaborative team to collaborative team, so worked with a lot of different teachers, and I think the most exciting thing I see is teachers talking about students who don't get the learning the first time and what are they going to do, and then those kiddos who have already gotten it, and really working together to find ways to challenge them so that it's about the kids learning and not just about the instruction.
Good evening. I'm Craig Maxwell. I'm principal at Southwest Middle School. And I think the biggest thing is that the 5 questions are questions that teachers have always been asking, but they've been doing it in isolation, maybe in their own classroom. And so having the structures in place and the time available for teachers to ask those questions with their colleagues has probably brought the greatest impact to their teaching and to the students' learning.
Hello, for those of you who can see me, Jeremy Mitchell, principal at West High School, and I think as a building administrator, what is most significant is it's taken a lot of the guessing as to the correct interventions to try to help kids, and we're getting specific data and specific information, which is allowing us to ensure that all of our students are succeeding.
Hi, I'm Erica Rogers. I teach English at West High, and I've seen really big impacts, I guess, in 2 different realms. First of all, within my particular PLC, I'm pretty sure I was asked to come tonight because my group looked like it was going to be dysfunctional, but it's actually really functional, so I think we're like the black sheep that turned ourselves around. I think that's why I had the target tonight. But additionally, I think it's really helped us. I'm in a PLC for senior English. And so it's helped the teachers that I work with and the students that we work with to really clarify what skills are priorities and to help the students understand what their learning goals are, as well as to help the teachers kind of reach a consensus about those priorities too.
Hello, I'm Jean Manning, Director of Early Childhood, and I think one of the most amazing things is besides the student learning and the impact, we're looking a lot at social emotional development of children in the early childhood PLCs, and really looking at kids' behaviors and how to manage and modify those behaviors and help children regulate themselves better so they're better prepared when they enter kindergarten. And the ownership of the staff in their learning regarding the students and the sharing of strategies and really a better system of collecting data so that they can make an impact in those ways. So it's been really exciting all around, and the staff comes in, they get right to work. There's no wait time, they're just ready to go, and some have said we want to meet more often, we want to, which is a challenge for us because our teachers are all around the district, and they want to go. We've had to cancel half-day classes for the morning, and so even though the PLC is only 2 hours long, they will stay that 3rd hour and continue to work, and then a very quick lunch and rush back to their school to prepare for their afternoon class. So it's really been exciting to see how they've just really, really wanted to extend what they're doing because they're seeing such a great impact in the classroom.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Stanfield, Coordinator of Career and Technical Education, and I would say the greatest impact is in a content area with a lot of singleton courses where we have one teacher teaching one section in a building. When I came to the district, I heard a lot of requests for, we just need time. And so we would utilize that time on those traditional PD days, but it was a lot of surface level, what activity you're using, what test am I using. And the move to PLCs has really created more of an interdependent and truly collaborative team versus just a working team. So that's been really exciting to watch.
Good evening, I'm Monica Dickens. I am a FACS teacher at South High, and I am one of the team leaders for our Child Development Multiple School PLC. So it used to be that I wouldn't see those other content area teachers like myself throughout the year. For us to get together monthly to really critically delve into what we essentially want our students to transfer with them, and what is that core content so they can be capable, confident as they transfer those skills. That has been really essential. But what I've really noticed too is our conversation is deep and rich and actually very courageous and sometimes quite scary when we try to decide what is essential for them to understand and give them the best learning opportunities to transfer that to the real world. And so I've seen a great impact on fine-tuning those skills with our students, especially the learning targets, and that we're all on the same page. And when my kids were prepared, we were able to write our final in the 3 months that we had our late start PLCs, and they all got scared, and I said, listen, you know this because I know you know this because I've taught you what you need to know to transfer to the real world. And they got done like, oh, that was a piece of cake. Well, yeah, because you knew it, you know. So the students are confident and they're capable, and it's going to transfer on.
I'll just open it up at this time for the board to ask questions. And you can either address one of the panel members if you have a particular question for their area, but certainly they are all capable of diving into any question or comment.
A quick question for anybody on the panel. When we started this out, there was a lot of question about starting early or going later in the afternoon. How would you assess that now that you're involved in it? Is that something you would change, or do you feel like that was the best decision and the best way to approach this?
I am an early riser, so the morning is good for me because that's my peak time. I do think it gets people there. I do love that the attendance is actually much better on those days. One thing, as a multiple school PLC, Jennifer has coordinated for us to meet at central locations throughout the district. Getting back to South High is very stressful, and I have to admit, on those days I come in like, okay guys, look, we just got, but here's my bag, I'm running in. Because we want to maximize that time, but at the same time, it is a struggle for me, I'll have to say.
And I'll just speak from coming from a district where we came with late start days. I think the productivity in the morning for the teacher aspect is very high. I think teachers come in ready to work. I think with the numbers that we saw, I would recommend that every day should be a late start day.
Okay, Erica. Dysfunctional. What do you mean, and how did it get better? And you don't have to name names. We don't.
I won't. I don't know if it's just a secondary teacher thing, if it's an English teacher thing, but West High and Parkway in general has kind of enjoyed our autonomy and our creative freedom in our instruction, and I think that, you know, consistently, historically speaking, our test scores have still been impressive. So there's always some kind of pushback when teachers feel that there's kind of standardization coming. And in my particular PLC, we have people of very, very different educational philosophies, teaching styles, and so on paper, it looked like it was going to be a cat fight all the time. And I think that everybody went into it a little wary about where this was going to go, but we worked really, really hard at the beginning to reach some common ground and some points that we could all agree on. Like, we're doing this for our students, that we have collective ownership of our students, and that we are all, in this together, and we can make it what we want to make it. Our administrators have been really helpful by saying, keep asking yourself those 5 critical questions of the PLCs. And I think, like Craig said, that's what good teachers do all the time anyway. And those kind of become our mantra. Like, why are we doing this? How are we all on the same page? And so we've had some scary conversations when you start looking at student data. Is it your kids? Is it my kids? There are kids. And so I think that after a little bit of probably initial discomfort, we are kind of at peace with our dysfunction, and we found ways that we can, you know us, we found ways that we can have points that we agree upon and maintain our priorities while still allowing ourselves the freedom to teach in a way that's natural to us while still getting great results from our students.
Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because
Are you at the other end of the building during this time? Or?
Perhaps so. Erica's said some nice things about some folks, but I really have to credit Erica. Erica's a team leader of the PLC team leader, and she works very closely with Beth Middendorf, who is our PD guru, if you will, at West High School. And I know that Beth has told me on many occasions how much she enjoys the honesty that Erica has with her, and they converse and think of ways that they can make it better. And when she says dysfunctional, I mean, we have professionals, we all are professionals, but I do think there were some very different personalities, and the fact that, when Beth told me that the senior English group was just going great, I think my jaw dropped, like my 5-year-old at Christmas time. What? I mean, it was, so it's pretty amazing. So I have to give Erica a lot of credit as far as that goes.
That's great.
Erica, I'm going to keep with you for just a minute. So you say you're in a PLC for senior English teachers. Is that the only course you teach at?
No, I also teach honors juniors.
Okay,
And
so what about PLCs?
absolutely, we've had a lot of those questions, right? Because every single person in my department has more than one course that they teach. Some have 3, some even have 4. And so we've kind of looked at it as you can't be in 2 places at once. And so we're sharing as a department consistently what all of the PLCs are doing, because there are people that teach seniors that are in a different PLC. They might be in an English 1, like a 9th grade PLC. So we're still working really hard to keep the lines of communication open, especially as far as best practice goes when we're achieving good results with our students. And at the same time, if we can collectively kind of prioritize our learning in that way, that's going to help how I teach my juniors, even though I'm not specifically targeting them. We'd had talked about, what do we do? Do you attend 2 PLCs? How do you stay involved in everything? And you can't. So it's definitely a matter. I mean, I think probably everybody who's a secondary person has other courses that they teach. So for us, it's really a matter of communication and sharing.
And how do you decide which PLC you're a part of? How did you decide that you were going to be, well, I know you're a leader, but senior English versus honors junior?
Sure. Ours was kind of a logistical thing. Originally, my PLC started as an English 3/4, because everybody in my PLC teaches either or both of those courses. And we had kind of looked at it as we've done a lot of work with the junior curriculum lately, and so we felt that was even more stable, I guess, than the senior curriculum was. So ours was a matter of, that was an area that we felt needed more attention. Seniors kind of get overlooked sometimes because they're like 1 foot out the door, but
I know, I live with one.
right? There you go. But kind of to what Monica was saying, that if we're really focused on transferring skills to the real world, we've got to make sure that the kids that are on their way out are able to do these things.
Bruce?
I guess for Amy and Susan here, and because number one, I can see you. And also, I think my question goes to probably you can answer it best. But we've got one or two common assessments in the district. I think those are changing, if not weekly, fairly rapidly. Some are coming and some are going. Any lessons learned from the PLC process that informs what are the better and maybe not so hot common assessments, and do we have a feedback loop in place for that?
That's a great question. The teachers I've been working with the most in Common Assessment are in English Language Arts, and they have 2 district assessments that they still use that we're keeping in common across the district, but they've, for every unit, started using the PLC time. They've written a pre and post test, and so that's like real time right then as soon as the units, and they're using formative assessment along the way and creating those together, which I think is really powerful.
And if I could follow up before. So the pre and post tests that are being developed in building level PLCs, are those shared throughout the district, or do we have kind of
not formally,
parallel?
But that's a great, they do share with teachers in other schools that they talk with on the development day when the whole district got together. So there was a lot of sharing after that, oh wait, you guys have already created that, so can you send it over? But not in a formal way.
Okay, thank you.
At the elementary level, we have common assessments in ELA and in math, and the instructional coaches have put together a Google Doc that after we common score with a team, we put any suggestions or areas of disagreement or questions up on there and come together all in one place on the Google Doc to have that as we go in to revise them for the next year.
Okay, and I guess for both of you, a wrap-up question would be, what's your personal assessment of the admin overhead burden represented by common assessments for the classroom teacher? There's nothing's free, so if we mandate the common assessment and then the team develops a pre and post test, at some point we grind the gears to a stop, at least for maybe some educators. So is there a...
So I think if we're talking about benchmark assessments where we're comparing our school to another school to another school, those are extremely valuable to have that in place. But there's also value in having the teachers with their own students saying, okay, our students are really struggling in this area. Let's find out exactly where they are, do some intervention or do some acceleration, and then check again and make sure that we've made progress in that area. So I kind of see them as being used for 2 different pieces.
Okay.
I started to say there was a lot of time involved in recording the results for the district benchmark assessment. And so you might have heard that. It did kind of slow that down a little bit. But the important thing was that the teachers were looking at the results and talking about them together and acting upon them with their students like right away. But the time that it took to do the other part was just an aggravation a little.
Yeah, some of the things I heard were along the lines of duplication in
exactly
in recording and that sort of
well,
thing.
they'd enter it into Infinite Campus or they'd create their own Excel spreadsheet, but then the interface for entering it onto the PARS was pretty complicated and had to happen one student at a time.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm driving at,
Okay.
from the efficiency standpoint.
Right.
So I assume district-wide we're looking at system solutions for those sorts of problems. Thank you.
I had a question for Susan. We haven't had one yet. Go ahead.
Okay. Craig, this is for you. Is a PLC by subject matter at the middle school, or is it by team?
We do it by content area, so subject matter.
Subject matter. So how does that really reach the individual student? How do teachers look at the individual student data and help individual students with specific needs?
Well, I think in the middle school, especially having both of those, having the content teams, the PLCs, and then also having the cross-curricular teams, we look at students in both areas, just in different ways possibly. So in the content area, we look at definitely how their achievement is, so being able to break down their achievement scores and looking at individual achievement scores, and there we can focus on where their mastery is in different content areas, looking at the content standards and seeing where they're proficient or where they're lacking, and then providing interventions in their content area. Where on the teams, we can provide interventions maybe for their social emotional aspects of the students. So I think having both of those in the middle school, I think that provides us a better aspect to look at students in all, the whole child basically, and provide interventions and support in all different ways for the students.
Do the teams still meet on a regular basis daily? So.
Well, we've traded off, so there is a give and take with this, and so being able to put CLT time into our schedule, we've given up some of our team time for that, so it's basically a half and half now, which I think is really a good trade-off for
There's
it.
still
So
good time, good quality time for teams to meet.
absolutely, for both purposes of the students.
So for anyone, how's the continuity from one month to the next? You know, to say, okay, this is what we discussed last time. Do we review it the next session? And, you know, how does that take place to have continuity over a month period of time?
Well, typically our teams meet more often than once a month. The PLC is the dedicated time, but we have additional times that we meet and discuss the same, you know, so it's really more continuous than once a month's the formal PLC, but then there are additional times scheduled on different days in the month.
Yeah, I would imagine at the elementary, the teachers, the grade level teachers get together somewhat, I imagine, during the week in terms of planning time, and so I assume that continues then throughout the month. Okay.
It might be particularly though the multiple
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah, I'm with the multiple schools, so being the leader, I will send out, we have an agenda, a running agenda that is adjustable throughout the month. So we have designed leadership roles in the MSPLC to be collaborative, and then the agenda we create every month. So I get the agenda going, I mail it out to all my MSPLC leaders, I copy Jennifer, and then people add on there what they want to talk about. But really, we have set up our goals for the year already. We have a goal of establishing, we decided this collaboratively as by SMART goals. We will develop a final common assessment by the end of, and it's been very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. So every year, basically, that agenda is just floating to what needs we need to meet that month. So we've already set up our big goals for the year. It's just breaking them down into little chunks. And then we fine tune that every time we're together and then reestablish who's going to do what between one PLC to the next PLC.
Right. So the structure is a little different for every PLC in that respect. Okay.
I would say, and with a lot of my MSPLCs, what seems to be working most successfully, since they are only seeing each other once a month, is that usually about a week after the meeting, there's follow-up kind of notes that get sent via email to all the members, and then kind of a week goes by, and then that next week they send a reminder of the upcoming meeting and kind of the upcoming agenda, just so that it's kind of always on their radar, but they unfortunately don't have as much contact time because they're in different geographic
Right,
spaces.
it depends, right, sure.
Right.
Thank you.
Susan, you said that, and I'm sure this echoed with all of them, you said something about that we're more focused on kids, we're talking about who got it, who didn't, and what do we do. Were there any surprises among PLC members as you got involved in this and started, maybe they were trained to say, well, nobody's getting it, or is there a tendency, and does that drive curriculum changes at all?
It does. What I've seen is teachers talking about, wait a minute, like look at your scores and look at mine, and how did you teach this? And which is really powerful. So they share their understanding sometimes of the content even. Like somebody will maybe teach part of the concept differently than another teacher. And then there's that shared like, well, oh, okay, now I understand it. I think myself a little better than I did before when they start talking about results together.
Oh, and one example, in my classroom, we just took a time and money assessment in 3rd grade. And in our math, we always take a pre-assessment, and then the information that you gather from that pre-assessment drives what you're going to be teaching in that unit. And for example, the students in my classroom, we took our time and money pre-assessment, and basically, as a whole class, that unit does not need to be taught. It only needs to be taught to the few students who are still working on that. So our whole class can move on, and then we're working with those 2 or 3 students who really need support in that area.
Great.
How do you fit the time in to do that?
Our schedule at our school, we have a half an hour every day that is called WIN time. It's what I need time. And so students who receive reading intervention or speech and language, those pullouts are done at that time. And then there are students that are in my classroom, and I'm able to do interventions or extensions with them in the classroom.
This is for anyone or everyone. Two things. How do you feel that the PLC work has changed you as an education professional? And how can we do it better?
I think as I'll take the easy question first, the second one. And I'm probably going to echo what most people up here would say: more time. I mean, we're always going to ask for more time. We're always going to want more time to talk to each other, more time to problem solve, troubleshoot, figure out which kids get it and which kids don't. Right now, my PLC meets in we have a common plan time, and so our scheduling guru has made it possible for each in-building PLC to have common prep time so that we can meet once every couple of weeks. So we have our PLC time and we have a shared prep time in between, so we have more continuity, like we were talking about earlier. But of course, I'm still going to ask for more. As far as how it's changed me as a professional, I think it has, it's shifted my focus. I think earlier in my teaching career, I was very, very focused on what I was doing as a teacher from an instructional standpoint. And I've been obsessively reading a lot about assessment lately, and it's completely changed my understanding of how to teach, with the fact that it's not nearly as much about my individual actions as it is about seeing how my students are responding to it. So I guess kind of in a non-creepy way, keeping closer tabs on my students, and having a better, and I need to stop talking. I think though that it's made me a less self-centered teacher and a more student-centered teacher.
My son goes to Parkway West. He's only a sophomore.
I don't think I have anyone with the last name of Jacob right now.
But you may.
I might.
Erica, the school board is glad that you're not creepy.
I thought you were going to say that the way to do it better is turn the asylum over to the inmates.
I think not necessarily how to do it better, but something that we did very well to start off was the preparation of our CLT leaders. Coming together this summer, getting everyone on the same page, having common expectations of what their expectations were, then transferred into a great beginning of PLCs, and that momentum has carried through. So moving forward, if it's maybe not something we can do better, but keeping that momentum, keeping that common understanding and new learning, so that this first year isn't sort of the precipice, but just the bottom of the mountain.
And I'll just kind of second that as well too, from having sat on the budget committee. I think it's important to continue to provide resources to continue what we're doing with the PLCs. I've got an incredible instructional coach in Susan, and I know many of the buildings do, that continue to provide that support to the teachers and to the PLCs that are doing the work. I think everything that Liz has done to provide the summer trainings and the ongoing trainings throughout the year has really helped to continue this going forward. So it's not just about putting the time aside and telling our parents, please figure out how to make the schedules work for your kids to get them there later on the first Wednesdays of the month, but it's about providing that additional support and training to ensure that the PLC process is going on throughout the schools and throughout the district. I think that has been very beneficial, and that's, I think, what we need to continue to stay the course with.
And there's just one more thing, two more things I'd like to add. I'm one of those professional development junkies. Like, I love going to all those courses, and so when when we were asked who would like to lead, I was like waiting just to see if anyone would. I can do it. I'll do it. Because I have to apply something for it to be real, just like our students. They have to be able to transfer it to make it real. And so for me, it's been a really exciting process because I'm pulling out all my books and I'm, incorporating things that I've learned. And then tonight we met with Jennifer and the rest of the CTE leadership team about talking about this exact thing. What do we need in order to continue this process? What professional development do we need? What time do we need with our MSPLCs? So it's conversations we're having too, and if we could keep working with you to give us that time, that'd be wonderful.
I would also say, in observing my teachers, we had a lot of MSPLCs to staff leaders for, if you will, and find people willing to lead. And in some of those groups, there maybe weren't natural born leaders that had their hand in the air. And so what I would say is that every single one of my MSPLC leaders have really emerged and led and had some courageous conversations, and people who maybe were kind of quiet leaders before have really kind of come out and had some really powerful conversations with their colleagues. So it's really interesting to see how the leadership, in the name of student achievement, is really being distributed amongst more members of our staff.
Dee, you said everybody. So
yes, I did.
What I have found pleasantly surprising is we looked at the questions of the PLC. That fourth question, you guys received this evening a request from West High and from the math department, our algebra initiative. As they were doing this fine work, they realized that there was a group of the students who were really excelling. It was like, what do we do if they get it? They're getting it sooner, and so what do we need to do? And so now they've asked me and Beth, as they came in to talk to us, we need more differentiation, because we go to workshops, we hear about differentiation, but we need a math teacher who can talk about differentiation within the math classroom. We need that assistance. That's what we need from you. And so to me, that is, can you see them? There's goosebumps right there, because it's just exciting, because they are, and we've done PLCs at West High for a few years, but that they have taken it to this level, and they're not the only ones. That is gratifying. And it's exciting.
It's very exciting, and Sam, I know you feel the same way. I think I do. What was it, almost 4 years ago? We started on the Project Parkway Steering Committee with a blank slate for a mission, and developed the mission and the vision it wasn't just us, it was 35 other people.
Wonderful group.
A lot of them in this room.
A lot of parents.
And to hear this, it's just so exciting, and I have goosebumps too, so.
Yeah, we're really proud of where you come with all this, and
exciting.
it is making a difference for each of you professionally, as well as for the students. And I think we'll see some great benefits in our test scores as a result. And the test scores, of course, relate to student achievement, and that's what we're here for. So.
One of the statements or messages that came from a previous panel we had for PTO leaders was that each of you have your own individual classrooms or your classes, but the teachers that night said that they now felt more responsible for a broader group of students. So as we think about all, I don't know if anybody wants to make a comment in that regard. We all have traditionally had our classes, we close our door, but now when you collaborate, you're not looking at only your data, but others' data. I don't know if anybody wants to make a comment, but that was certainly a theme we heard, and I'm seeing heads be nodded here. I think that's really a significant when you think about all, because I think the more folks we have looking at data, the more strategies we're looking at. Maybe it gets to what you're talking about, Jeremy, in terms of looking for other ways to really differentiate and find success for all.
I have a few questions. It's hard for me to sit and wait to be last. But I did a good job, so now I'm going to read you my little list. I see Bonnie McCracken in the back, and I have a question for you, even though you're not on the panel. But you have to come forward and speak into a microphone so that Liz's family can hear every word you say. And I'm so glad that
Good evening, Beth.
I'm so glad that you're the elementary principal that's here, because you're the one that I talked to about this. I had a call from a parent, and you and I talked about this, that no matter how many times we try to communicate about the child care availability, sometimes the message just doesn't get through. So that was after our September PLC date. And have we satisfied the parents about childcare, the elementary parents, from your perspective?
That is really the last time I've heard any comment to that effect. And I think that our communication with the parents, our staff's excitement, just sharing the news about it, sharing information about it. We put it in our weekly updates in the newsletter, and we share it at PTO meetings, so we try to keep the value of it in the forefront with the parents. I know teachers share about it in their own newsletters, so that is the only comment we've had, and as far as I know, our parents are extremely supportive, so we're thrilled.
Well, I can tell you that as the parent of 2 high schoolers, they're loving that late start, loving it. They wish they could do it
The
every
students
Wednesday.
or the parents?
The students. By the time they get to high school, I don't think the parents care one way or the other, so.
We really have had a positive response since then, and we really try to keep that line of communication open, though, so that we'll hear
All
any
right.
concerns ongoing.
All right, thank you. So Liz, this one's for you. Is there a coordinated effort to share results? So for instance, if Aaron's 3rd grade PLC at Riverbend comes up with, some great strategies for differentiation and, to help these students that don't get the time or the money, how do we share that with the other 17 schools so that, it's like tossing a stone into a pond? How do we make that happen?
Okay, so I'm going to address it in 2 different ways. From the school-based PLCs, the instructional coaches are working with each other, and that's at the elementary and the middle school. So we have a natural system in place for sharing of great strategies that's set up through that system. For the multiple school PLCs, they utilize we have the website where they deposit, I guess, all of their information. It's a Google website, but it seems to be working pretty well once we've got all the glitches figured out. So all of their stuff is posted for each other to look at so they can see the work. The trickier part for us is the sharing through the high schools. However, the curriculum coordinators are the ones who manage that piece of the work. So when they get their groups together, they're able to share that information as part of the work that they're doing. I believe next year we'll have better strategies in place as well, or more and different ways to share. But for the first go, this is what we had in place to get that information out there.
Yeah, we've only had 4 of them.
I know.
So,
I think we're doing great.
I think it's amazing how far everyone has come over the course of 4 months.
Yeah.
And, probably how much more comfortable people feel going into them now than they did, before their first one in September.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to say with Erica, when she said that, okay, here's why I wanted Erica to come. After the first PLC meeting in September, I got emails from teachers who said, oh my God, this was awesome. And Erica sent me one of those, and I had no idea about the other stuff. But it was, you guys, honestly, a lot of times after professional learning, we get critiqued, which is okay, that's my job, I get that a lot. But after this professional learning, I got so many positive emails, I was sending them to Desi because I'm like, I can't, it was so exciting to see how excited the teachers were. And I know you guys know this too, but this was really a groundswell effort from our teachers who were doing this, and then we just took it and made it happen for everyone, so anyway.
Well, while we're on that topic, oftentimes when people come speak to the board, it's you're singing to the choir, and whoever's arranging the presentation brings the best of the best, and I'm just assuming that this group sitting before us is the best of the best, and that you guys are excited about PLCs and you guys are getting everything out of them that was intended. So my question is have you had any complaints from teachers, or do you hear that it's not working for us, or do you hear that this is a waste of my time?
We haven't heard this is a waste of my time. We do have teams that are struggling to become a team, but that's to be expected as you're moving into a new initiative. So with those struggling teams, and I have to say, we've got, like I said, the instructional coaches to help at the middle school and the elementary school. At our high schools with the struggling teams, our coordinators have been out there working with these teams, trying to help them see their way. One of the challenges that they're facing is, in order for the work to work, you have to agree upon common assessments or some kind of common that you can actually compare to see how the kids are doing, and we're working through that. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but I think that it's moving forward. And like I said, at the high school level, with the help of the coordinators coming in to assist there, that's been really great. And then at the middle school and at the elementary school, we really haven't had those struggles because we have the on-the-scenes instructional coaches who are really helping. Did I answer the question? Okay. Sometimes I get distracted.
Thanks. Okay, and so for Jennifer and Monica, on the first day, the September PLC, I came to this building, and Dr. Bogus took me around. He was smart. He didn't take me to the content area grade level meetings, because those we would assume would go rather smoothly, but he took me to the multi-school. I went to a fax meeting, a band meeting, and a business meeting. So I got to see the dysfunctional ones, the groups that hadn't had the opportunity to come together yet. This was their first time meeting, so they were, establishing their norms. Really, they were way behind the other kinds of groups. And so now we're 4 months later. How are we coming?
We are moving forward. We still have some setbacks here and there, and fortunately, we were able to utilize the January PD time. I did a mid-year kind of assessment, self-assessment, and worked with the MSPLC leaders to kind of find out kind of the same questions. Where are we still struggling? And then their January development, because the middle school business, facts, and technology and engineering are all the same people that are going to be meeting together. We were able to then provide them with targeted development to help them. And it was wonderful feedback, because they got back with me and they said, that day got us refocused. We know exactly what we need to do. Here's what we're going to do in February. And they wouldn't stop telling me all that they were doing. And that is in some of them. I have another one that is moving along very well. And they've really kind of, gained momentum. So they're learning, and at different rates, and so I'm kind of trying to differentiate my support to those groups based on what they need.
And the fax group that was here, I know you're in high school, and this was a middle school group, but they discovered that they don't sequence the same.
Right.
So it's pretty hard to compare data when 4 of the 5 schools were doing cooking and the 5th school was doing sewing.
Right.
And I think they have to agree. If it's going to work, if PLCs are going to work, they're going to have to agree to do the same sequence.
Right, and and they're in a unique situation, because prior to now, they've been able to kind of come together and let's work on this unit, but then I'm going to go back to my school where I'm the only person that teaches it, and if it makes more sense for me to move it, I can do that. And so this was kind of the first time that they all had to be on the same page, whereas a lot of our other content area, they've been there a long time ago. So I think the other thing is that they have colleagues outside of their department that have kind of been through those struggles, and so I think that they're also reaching out and learning from one another, which is really powerful.
One of the things that I think that when we came together as the Child Development Multiple School PLC, so it's Child Development 1, Child Development 2, we're also in the career pathways for the Teaching Profession Foundations and Practicum course, so it's teaching students how to be teachers, and they have the 14-week practicum course. We have a PLC of all of those courses, so we decided to start at the beginning. When you start at the beginning, you start questioning everything too. What do we believe? What do we truly believe about children? So you were asking all those questions through Project Parkway as you were developing that, and we've had lots of professional development on that. But when you get in the same room and say, what do we believe that our students need to transfer on? We're constantly going back to how things should be structured. What I wanted to say to that also was, because I'm at South High, so our other schools, God love them, they have a preschool in the building, and I don't, and by the time I retire, I want to get a preschool back into that school, because I know you are, and we're using those resources in many ways. But it would be nice to have that as an opportunity for my students to experience that. So even with not having our own preschool in-house, we still have to keep changing things, because the other high schools have a different learning experience than my high school students do. So we're still trying to work that out without overloading our resources, which we do. Okay, so we're still working that out, but the conversations.
West High goes to early childhood? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's still those conversations, and really, I remember one time during one of our meetings, and Jennifer was there because I called or emailed her later as a resource and said, can you give me some feedback about that conversation, because I really felt that we had to like dig down deep, like she was talking about with the English PLC, to get to what do we really believe. And I had to really feel that I could not move on until we had that conversation. And that was so painful. I walked out there, I was like, whew. But we all came to an agreement, you know, and that was really powerful. I felt that that was just like a launching board for me at that point.
It's like therapy.
It is.
This question is for Craig and Jeremy and Jean, and that is, which is of the 5 questions, I can't remember the order, but what do you do when they don't get it? What do you do when one of your PLC groups or multiple PLC groups aren't getting it? How do you, as administrators, help them along?
I'll start. We have a kind of a PLC-ish administration counseling, a lot of our interventionists within West High that we meet weekly. And so it's really interesting because as we talk about kids, and we will look at kids, we do this weekly, and it's usually 2.5 hours every Wednesday at 8:30 if you're ever bored, where we talk about essentially every kid that we think is struggling, whether it be from a social, emotional, and academic. We'll use anybody who's getting an F or anybody whose grade point has dropped. And so as we talk about those individuals, we then have where we in the past where we said, well, it's an F, but let's put them in this. Then we can talk to our PLZs and say, what are you seeing? What aspect? And we can find out the specific skill that there might be struggling on. And then when we send it to an intervention, we don't say, hey, let's go work on English 4, let's work on inferences, or let's work on paragraph structure. And so what it does is it pinpoints that need that much more, which has allowed us to do some things within our building with our special ed delivery system and with our work in expanding our academic support centers. So I wish I had 3 hours because I'd filled the time, but it's just, it helps ensure that we are more specific and more strategic, not only in the efforts that we give, but also in how we structure our intervention. So in times like these, when money is important, we can ensure that we are spending the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak.
And if you're talking, Beth, about if you've got a PLC that is, I guess, along the same lines as what Erica said is dysfunctional, you know, I mean, we do the same thing as we do with students. We keep them after school for detention, and we just hope they get No, but really, I think the first thing is that we have to be comfortable with the dissidence in a PLC. Is that there should be, in fact, every PLC at some point should be feeling uncomfortable. If they're not feeling uncomfortable, then it's too easy the work, and they're not doing the right work. So I think we do feel comfortable with them feeling uncomfortable. I think the key thing is providing them with support, providing them with training. Again, I've got a great instructional coach that can work alongside as a coaching aspect instead of an administrator aspect. So she provides a lot of support for them in working through some of that uncomfortableness. But I think really it comes back to going back to those questions. And if we're continually having PLCs go back to the questions, then it's not necessarily about how we get along, but it's about how we do the work for the students. And so it takes the focus off of us and keeps it focused on the students.
Yeah, I'm just describing that brings to mind our parents as teachers, parent educators have been developing, because we don't have a good data collection system, and the parents are our learners in that program, not the children necessarily. So we're developing a parent assessment to look at parents' confidence and how capable they are as parents, and we want them to self-reflect on their own parenting and the knowledge that they've gained about child development, et cetera, by participating in the program or from their participation in the program. So part of the assessment, what came up is all of a sudden the parent educators in the PLCs were saying, well, they're going to be talking about us. And it was very threatening to them to think, because we have always had a parent evaluation, but it really is more of a climate satisfaction survey than actually looking at what information we give them and what they're, you know, how they're learning or what they're learning from it. So when we said, but if you look at the implementation of the program and you look at what they're learning, in order for them to become better parents, we have to really look at what we're doing. And when we really focused on what good things we can do for kids, they started to really become more comfortable with the fact that, well, this is going to really look at, you know, they're very conscientious. So it is very hard to get something back and have, if your name is on it or not, to not think, well, what did I do wrong? But actually, I think that's a good thing, and we should all be doing that anyway, thinking and reflecting on our practice. So that's a little different twist on it, but that was the group that struggled the most with looking at it and how it would reflect on what they're doing. So.
Thank you.
You know, and I'll add, I think what some of our teachers are finding, especially in those that are in groups that are struggling a little bit more, is that it's messy, which is like learning, and that our students sometimes struggle and they don't get it the first time around. And so I think it's almost creating a situation where they're a little bit more in tune to some of the struggles that their kids have when they're working in groups and that kind of thing, because it's not always going to be easy right away, and it's okay to learn and to reflect and then to adjust. So that's been really good, I think.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, just it sounds, what I'm hearing here is that particularly the in-school PLCs, that you're finding ways to adapt to kind of make this work, and that I'm wondering if there's a way, if you think it would be necessary to, like, so the instructional coaches can go in and help PLCs that might be struggling, or is there any interest in establishing any norms with regards to meeting more frequently, or are you allowing the PLCs to figure that out on their own with maybe a little bit of coaching?
Twice a week anyway. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the teachers are together in their CLT with their content area, and then we have the late start day. And then on Fridays, most often, they choose to plan together. So it's at least 3 times a week.
So it's pretty standardized.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same with us. We meet 2 times a week formally, and even sometimes if we say it's an independent choice day, our teachers are choosing this as well.
Great.
One more
Yeah.
question. Curious about gifted and music. How do they fit into this structure? And also resource teachers, special ed teachers. Who do they meet with?
Well, gifted is like career technical ed, CTE. We meet as groups on our multiple school PLC days.
So how do you get everyone together, though? Like at elementary, do they all come together?
No, we have by area.
By area?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be glad to talk about music and art and theater. We have 23 multiple school PLCs in the arts, and I have to say, without a doubt, we've had extremely positive comments from these teachers who are finally getting a chance to get together. Because unlike a school where the 3rd grade can get together during their plan time, we cannot. And so this has been a very big learning experience. And you know, each group is a little different as far as their movement along the continuum. Some are just starting. Some had data already from an implemented common assessment. In elementary art and music, we had a common assessment last year in 5th grade. With Cintio, we had our data in PARS, so they were able to start right away with that. They analyzed the data. They looked to see, not necessarily per student, but where students as a trend across the district and their schools, where they were falling down. They went back, they analyzed, they looked to see. For instance, I can give an example. Elementary art, one group said, our kids are not getting perspective. So they went back to try to, bolster up their teaching strategies with how they do, how they relay perspective with their kids. Another example would be, I visited one PLC, and they wanted to do pre-assessments. So as I was listening, each of the 4 people in the PLC was coming up with a different way to do a formative assessment, and they were going to take turns using each other's to see which one is going to be most successful. So they're really coming forward, and like I said, each group is a little different on where they're starting with. Now, you had to have some sort of a common assessment to do what they're doing. Some of our groups are still, for instance, in the high school art world, I can understand private practice and philosophies. So they're still trying, for instance, in a drawing class to determine what is achievement and what does that mean. I mean, we've got our content skills and so forth, but how do you, so it's coming into all kinds of things like grading practice and what do you, there's a philosophy on teaching drawing. So without a doubt, they're coming together and they're making progress. But each team is a little bit different depending on how comfortable they are with it. And so I don't know if I've answered your question, but they love coming together. They're making progress, each at their own rate, depending on where they started.
Great, thank you.
So with the special school district teachers, that was exciting. Marie Burke, Kim Toby, I'm missing Beth Nesbitt. They worked together with me to figure out how to do the special educators for their PLC, for their CLTs. And we have MSPLCs for special educators. So like the speech pathologists, they get together by area like the gifted specialists do. At the school level, and you guys jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the general educators, special educators usually meet with the team. Is that correct, guys? So they were set up to be part of a team. And I know at the elementary school, they were looking at which one of our grade levels has the greatest number of kids who are identified. And then the special educator would be assigned to that team for the year, because it's not what we know from the research on effective collaborative teams is that you don't want to have someone who's bouncing around. You need them to be on a team so they're actually part of that team. We had some challenges with TAs, so now we offer development for our teaching assistants on topics that have been given our ideas from our administrators. So our TA topic for February PLC is going to be how to use a smart board. So we're just trying to work with the different groups that we have. We had a challenge with our paraprofessionals. Some of them were at some high schools were put on content area teams. They needed to be in their own PLC, so now they're doing that. So we're just been kind of adapting as it seems to fit in. So to answer the question about the special educators, I think that one of the challenges, though, that they feel from our MSPLCs is they wish that they have more time to meet. I'm the girl that's the glass is always half full. I've never seen a half empty cup in my life. So I'm like, but it's more time we've ever had before. But I do think that if there was some way to figure that out, that would be great, Tom. I think that was kind of to your question. So that was that. It's good.
Thank you.
For early childhood, as Liz said, the special educators are meeting with the gen ed teachers. They're part of the team. But we actually have 6 teams of TAs that are led by TAs that are studying social emotional development topic. It's led, one of the coordinators oversees those groups because we have like 38 teacher assistants. So we would end up with too many teacher assistants in the teacher groups, so we had to make for this first year we're doing separate groups, and they're really enjoying it, and some of the TAs are developing as leaders, and a lot of them have degrees and are probably future teachers in our program. So it's been a nice opportunity for them.
Thank you.
You know, we mentioned a group earlier, I think Liz mentioned the nurses. They happen to meet in our office, and that's in a group that's really excited too. They're looking at data. They've always worked well together. They're looking much more meaningfully and deeper at significant data and practices, and so they're really growing. I think, Liz, you've had conversation with them.
Great. I think we've kept you educators long enough, late enough. Some of you have very early mornings, so thank you all for your participation and for your work on this really important initiative.
And you guys, Lisa wanted to remember before they leave, we did a survey after the first, I kind of forgot about this. After the first one, I sent out a survey, and I would not open it. I'm like, I don't want to know. I'm like, so I finally, how was it, it was like 5 days later, I finally opened it up, and I looked at it, I'm like, They liked it. They really liked it. It was so exciting. But I just wanted to mention that because I kind of forgot. But it was one of those ones like, I don't really want to know. But then it turned out great. So, Desi, may I turn it back to you? Good?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Dr. Marty, if you could join me at the podium. We do want to recognize this effort tonight. As you heard, a great culture shift really has occurred in building the trust and relationships it takes. And I'm going to tell you, in my visits to the schools, teachers have reported, and this is unsolicited, that this is the best professional development that they've participated in. They use the time and apply their learning immediately, and it wasn't to devalue the traditional professional development days. And they report that those have value too, but the timeliness of the late start days and the ongoing collaboration does have the teachers, as you've heard, asking for more and more time. So personally, really, I believe out of every initiative we have going on, and we do have quite a few initiatives going on, that this really is the most single high leverage action that will support every one of our district goals and has the highest impact on student achievement. I realize that because of the measurable objectives regarding student academic outcomes, the focus of the PLC work will probably have the greatest area impact in Goal 1, but I believe the collaboration cuts across all goals, including Goal 6, as it's a more efficient way to reach all. And that's part of the culture shift. It's a shift from teaching to learning, what was taught versus what was learned, from coverage of content to demonstrating proficiency, from working in isolation to working collaboratively, and from assigning grades to monitoring progress. It's a great culture shift. It builds leadership capacity and empowers teachers. To watch in practice has me watching mission in action as our teachers are learning organization and responding to challenges. As a school board, you made a bold move by supporting our efforts in changing the calendar to include those late start days. You did this when we showed the concept and philosophy, as well as sharing results across the country and other districts. Thank you for your trust. Tonight, we honor the professional learning communities as an initiative that is truly for all, by all. So much occurs to make this successful effort. The calendar change creates logistical challenges that must be supported by all in our district. The premise of the 5 questions in the PLC requires unprecedented efforts for ensuring student learning. All teachers, all administrators, all support, all operations staff, and the parents and the students and the entire community make this effort happen. So tonight I want to thank the groups who are representing the collaborative teams across the district and thank everyone in this room, because tonight we add to kindergarten for all and algebra for all by recognizing the PLC efforts as one for all by all and adding it to our district plaque. So thank you very much and congratulations to everybody, including the board.
We actually, Desi postponed a video here, which we can show some other time. That was going to be kind of a demonstration, but I think we've had some wonderful discussion. We are very proud. Remember, we're going to try to fill this thing up in the next several years, and we're very proud of this addition to our For All, By All effort. So thank you, Desi. Thank you, panel. Excellent job.
We appreciate the panel here tonight. In addition, Dr. Marty and a representative from the school board will attend next week's Professional Learning Action Team to the meeting, and once again, publicly recognize the folks who did some of the quality work behind it. So thank you again tonight. Thank you all very much for being here. Very much appreciated. And it wasn't because of your dysfunctional team. I promise. That was the 3rd grade. No, I'm just kidding. RJ, go to bed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, how about if we take a short break? going to get started with our budget presentation.
Reserves and fund balance, and we're doing deficit spending to maintain the quality of education and certainly the many new initiatives that Parkway was bringing forth. Last school year, we decided or made the decision that we really needed to address what had turned into potentially a pretty steep problem for Parkway, and we reduced approximately $7.3 million from our expenditures. And with the board's additional revenues through a slight tax increase, we certainly closed that gap pretty significantly. We did indicate last fall that to get back to where we needed to, the process would likely take 2 years. And so we have been working this fall on year 2 of the budget concerns and budget issues. I'm proud to report to you tonight that we have a plan that will indeed bring us to a much better place in the 13-14 school year, and in fact will really restore Parkway to its strong financial position. So tonight we want to review some background and then provide you with recommendations that we believe will indeed put us back in a great course, but will maintain our core, our commitment to Project Parkway, and certainly Parkway's strong tradition both financially and educationally. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to first Paul Tandy, and Mark Stockwell, Desi Kirchhoffer, and I will also be participating along the way. Paul?
Can't tell if this is working or not. It is working. I got to get closer to it. Okay. Good evening. I had the pleasure of serving as the facilitator for the budget team this year, and I'll get into the group a little bit later, but I was just very pleased with the work of the team and how they put their Parkway hats on and did a lot of really good work and focused on the budget principles that had been developed. Before we get into the specifics of the work of the committee, I want to go talk about a little bit of the background of how we got to this point. As you know, we have a very supportive community in Parkway, and we have a very stable tax base. We have a good mix of commercial and residential, a strong local economy, stronger than many, and we have the ability to weather the economic storms better than probably most school districts around the state of Missouri. We have had also the past decade of community support in the tune of 2 bond issues. Those of you, many on the board, were involved in those campaigns in 2004 and 2008. Those were for capital improvements for our buildings. And then in 2006, the community supported the first operating levy tax increase that we've had in decades. So we were set up pretty well. We didn't, nobody really knew around 2007 that the economy was going to do what it did. But in retrospect, it was fortunate because we were set up better than probably a lot of school districts because of where we were. Other districts began to cut a lot sooner than we did. In fact, in some cases, we were adding programs and doing construction when other districts were doing the opposite. As Dr. Marty mentioned, the economic downturn in 2007 has had a negative impact. In fact, our revenues last year were less than they were in 2007. even though our expenditures, we've kept the expenditure growth down to, on average, about 2.8% increase annually, you can't sustain that for very long. And so had been utilizing our fund balance, our reserves, to balance the budget, and that's not sustainable. We know you can't do that forever. This chart shows on the top lines are revenues and expenditures, as you can see, starting in fiscal year '05. And then the bottom two lines are the fund balance. And as you can see, the fund balance went up after Prop R passed in 2006, as did our revenues. And it took us a couple years to implement Prop R on the expense side. But as you can see, because of the revenue flattening and the expenditures increasing, we started dipping into the reserves. And so projections were by FY12, I guess now, we would dip below the required, minimum required level that you have established for our reserve balance. So something needed to be done, and this was 2011. Some people have asked, what's so important about restoring the fund balance? We've had some parents ask that question. There's some very important reasons. First of all, as you know, first of all, it prevents us from having to borrow money and pay interest fees in the fall before our property taxes come in. As you know, Parkway is fairly unique in the state of Missouri, and then almost all of our revenue is local, over 93 or 4%. Mark can correct me, but and so we get almost all of that in the December, January, end of the year time frame. And so we have to have a decent fund balance to cover us in the rest of the year, unlike other school districts who may receive larger amounts of money every month from the state. In fact, just this past year, we actually did have to borrow money to cover operating expenses, and we had to pay interest. Now, we paid that off, but I think it was to the tune of about $50,000. Is that correct, Mark? So it's the first time we've done that in a long time. Another reason why you want to restore the fund balance is it could jeopardize our AAA bond rating. We're one of a handful of districts in the state that have that highest bond rating. We want to preserve that because if it drops, it results in higher interest rates, which means higher costs ultimately to us as taxpayers. And then finally, we need to do it because your policy states that we need to do it. In fact, it says within 4 years, if it dips below the, I think it's 17.3% level, that we've got 4 years to restore that. And it has dipped below that level now. Why am I not clicking? I'm not clicking.
There you go.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just have you click it for me. So in 2011, as you know, this decision was made to begin a cost containment process. We plan to phase it in over 2 years, so we're in the second year of that process. And we had a combined approach coming into it, hopefully to decrease expenditures and also increase revenues because we were not at our tax rate ceiling. So in the first year, which was 12-13, our goal was to reduce $8 million approximately from the operating budget and also increase revenues through an operating tax rate increase. Thanks to your leadership, we accomplished both of those. We didn't quite get $8 million. We'll talk about in specifics what we did accomplish last year in reductions. But we're making good progress. In the second year, Mark's projections are we need to cut an additional approximately $2 to $4 million. And that's approximately 1 to 2% of our overall operating budget, just trying to put that into context, because our overall budget's over $200 million. Here's where we, thank you. Here's where we, what we did last year. On the left-hand column is what we initially set out to do, and on the right are the actual reductions we were able to achieve. So pretty good. We got $7.4 million in reductions in those categories as shown. We did reduce approximately 127 full-time positions, and the good news is we had 0 teacher layoffs and very, very few people actually lost a job. We were able to place almost every one of those full-time positions within the district in another position. So that 2-year process through attrition is working, and we'll plan to do that again for the reductions being recommended. So now this chart shows where we ended up after last year with the almost $8 million in cuts. And you'll see the green line on the bottom, the line that was dropping off the chart there, that was the initial, and then the green line that's flattening out there, that's where we are now. So we've made some good progress. Obviously still have some more work to do. So this fall, Dr. Marty convened a budget team, and the budget team consisted of the members on the screen, the superintendent's action team, as you can see there, the superintendent's leadership team, as well as individuals from food services, as you can see, nursing, teachers, secretaries, custodian, librarian. People always want to know who was on the committee, so you can see what the voices that were in the room during the month of November and early December. We had representation from all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. We had support personnel, secretarial, and so forth, curriculum. And as I said earlier, you know, a lot of great voices in the room, but they all put their Parkway hat on and tried to do the work that needed to be done collectively. And I really applaud their work. These are the budget principles. You saw these last year. The only thing I would point out is that we did add the last 2 bullets to this from last year, and that was that we wanted our personnel reductions, if we're going to make personnel reduction decisions, they need to be sustainable over time. In other words, we don't want to make a cut that we really think realistically in a couple years we're going to have to put back in place. We want it to be sustainable. We don't want to have to be coming back and forth. And that our budget reduction decisions should be systemic. We added those, the rest are the same from the previous year. After the budget team met during the month of November and early December, the recommendations that they developed fell into the following 7 categories: district administrators and departmental support staff, district operating budgets, greater efficiencies, personnel supporting teachers in schools, school and program secretaries, the high school staffing model, and new revenues. And now Mr. Stockwell is going to talk you through the specifics of each of those. I did pass out the green and blue sheets to you, and the blue sheet has a summary of the 7 areas, and then the other green, the blue is the summary, and then the green is the FAQ. And all those documents and more will be on the website tonight, along with the PowerPoint slides from this presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Good evening. As Paul mentioned, the committee came forward with these recommendations, and I'm going to run through them fairly quickly. The first category is administrators and department support staff. We're recommending the reduction of 18 positions in this area. It would be 4 to 6 administrators, 4 to 6 positions in the teaching and learning and accountability division, 6 positions in the operations facilities category, and 2 positions in the student services division. And we're estimating the savings from those changes to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 to $1.4 million. The next category is district operating budgets. We're recommending, as we begin developing next year's budget, we're going to ask all of our program managers to reduce their operating budgets by 5%. We understand that not everyone will be able to do that, but where we can, we're going to ask that to happen. We're also lowering the school building operating budgets. They're provided a per pupil allocation to pay for daily operating costs, supplies, postage, those types of things. We're going to reduce those by 5%. We're going to reduce out-of-district travel, speakers, and consultant fees. I would like to point out as well that some of the changes we made last year, through half of this year, we're about $200,000 down on our travel budget. So we have cut quite a lot in there already. We plan to adjust our textbook matrix funding, and then suspend the tuition reimbursement program. And we're hoping to generate between $750,000 and $850,000 out of these changes. Through greater efficiencies, we hope to continue lowering our costs through our utility costs. We were just recently recognized by the Environmental Protection Agency for reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 10% as a district for this past year. And that was before we actually implemented the solar panels that are actually going on our buildings right now. And we're also in the design phase, or moving towards the design phase on the CNG bus project, fueling station, and the 30 buses that will be in operation hopefully in the fall. We are recommending a restructure to the 6th grade outdoor school. We want to implement electronic bus stop notifications, say on some postage there. We plan to restructure summer school to some extent. We want to eliminate or seek external funding for the back-to-school kickoff event. And we plan to adjust the extra duty budget, and that is the pool of funding that is used to pay for extra duty stipends for coaches and activity sponsors and those types of things in the district. We hope to save out of all of these categories or groups $290,000 to $390,000. The next category is personnel supporting teachers in schools. We currently have 3 middle school math facilitators. The committee felt like we could actually eliminate these positions. There's 3 positions currently that cover 5 schools. They primarily provide support to teachers in helping them improve their practice. There are several reasons that the committee felt like we could adjust these without having a major negative impact on our students. One is that related to the PLC group efforts that you heard about just a few minutes ago. The second piece is that I think they also mentioned this in that presentation as well. Middle schools have team planning time at this point already, so they're able to work with each other in trying to make sure they're addressing the needs of all students. But probably one of the more important pieces is that at the middle school level, math teachers are certified math teachers. At the elementary level, basically your teachers are generalists and they teach all of the subjects. So by using the PLCs and the team planning time, the committee felt like at the middle school level, the math teachers could help the other math teachers become more effective in their instruction. We hope to save $150,000 to $200,000 through that change. We also are looking at making some adjustments to our secretarial staffing. Right now, our middle schools are provided staff secretaries, and they receive 1 secretary for every 300 students. At the high school level, we currently have a model that provides a staff secretary for every 250 students. What we're recommending is that we use the same model at the high school that we're currently using at the middle school. So we'd go to the 1 to 300, and basically that would eliminate 3 staff secretarial positions at the high school level. We're also hoping to eliminate 3 to 5 positions within the district level departments, and that should save us $170,000 to $225,000 a year. We're also looking at the high school, recommending changes to the high school staffing model. The high schools are staffed using a student-teacher ratio. We basically take their projected enrollment, we divide it by 16.71. That's our base student-teacher ratio. That develops, provides us a base pool of staffing. But in addition to that, we also add a number of other what we call fixed staffing positions. Several of those are librarians and counselors. But there's also, I believe, about 12 positions in each high school that are kind of flexible in nature. The schools have some ability to kind of move that FTE around to kind of fill some of their needs. We're recommending that we eliminate 3 of the 12 from each of the schools. So essentially, the 4 high schools, you'd end up with 12 fewer high school positions. Right now, our overall student-teacher ratio at the high school level is about 13.5 to 1. This change would actually increase that to about 13.9 to 1. So it's actually a pretty small change in the overall high school instructional staffing. And we hope to save between $650,000 and $850,000 through this change. And finally, we're recommending some adjustments in our programs that would generate some additional revenues. Several years ago, the school district or the Board of Education made the decision to begin taking fewer new VST students each year. And as a result of those changes, what we've seen is our VST, our voluntary student transfer program, enrollment is essentially less than half of what it was just a few years ago. We've now fallen, right now we're at about 1,100 students. If we continue, right now we're taking 80 students a year at the kindergarten and the first grade level. If we continue to take only 80 students a year, you're going to continue to see that VST enrollment decline. What we're recommending is that we begin taking more than the 80 students that we've been taking, not enough to grow the enrollment back up, but basically just to stabilize it where it is now. So we would hope to maintain around 1,100 students moving forward, and that would generate additional revenues for us. We're also recommending increases in rental fees for our buildings and our athletic field usage. We historically have not charged anything for exterior grass fields. When we put in the artificial turf fields, we do rent those, but the grass play fields have always been free for use. What we've found is that they get a great deal of play, and the grass is destroyed continually, and we spend a great deal of time and money refurbishing those fields for the use. We hope to maybe generate enough money to maintain those fields by renting them. And we hope to generate $100,000 to $150,000 through those changes. And that's basically what we're recommending. If you add all of those together, the range is, our expected range is between $3.3 and $4.1 million. We're hoping to generate about $4 million in annual savings. And if we do that, again, you sit back to the same chart, you see that our revenues and expenditures are basically right in line with each other moving forward for the next 5 years. But we do generate a small surplus for the next 3 or 4 years. And what you see then is our fund balances begin to climb back up, and by the 5th year we are actually back to our reserve requirements. So again, we don't know what's going to happen in the economy moving forward, but we do feel that the changes we've made will allow us to meet our goals. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and I think then back to Dr. Marty, just kind of talk a little bit more about how we're moving forward.
So, pending your questions and guidance tonight, what we'd like to do moving forward is to have a series of meetings to gather community input on the draft recommendations, and we've had those scheduled, as you can see on the chart. The first one would be Monday night at North High School. It'll all be from 7 to 9 p.m. And then, based on the feedback we get, make any adjustments that may be necessary, and then come back to you in February, hopefully for seeking your approval. And then I think at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Marty, or do you want to entertain some? Why don't we just entertain questions on the proposal at this time?
Go ahead.
Mark, over a period of time, we've talked about expenditure increase of 2.8%. Doesn't that have to get pretty close to zero if we're going to make any progress? I mean, if you grow by even 2% a year, that's $4 million more in expenses.
Yeah, we're not, I mean, with our current projections, our revenues aren't going to grow by 2% a year. So yes, with these cuts that we made last year, I'm not sure if you recall, but we actually spent $220 million in our operating budget last year. This year, we're going to spend, I'm projecting we'll spend somewhere between $214 and $217 this year. So we're going to spend less this year than we did last year. And then with these adjustments, even though we have salary agreements in place for 3 of our employee groups right now, so we have some growth in costs that we didn't have any control over because they were already in place, the contracts. But even with these reductions in staffing and the cuts, we're basically going to stay flat for this year, from this year to next year. So, I mean, we're going 3 years where we actually declined, where we're going to be lower next year than what we were last year. So you have a 3-year period where we've gone down instead of up. So yeah, you're right. Our revenue structure under the current economic circumstances will not generate enough revenue to support normal growth in expenses on an ongoing basis. Now, hopefully the economy turns around the next few years. If interest rates happen to turn around, I mean, we could generate an extra $4 to $5 million a year in interest rates, you know, if they happen to jump back up to the 4 and 5% range. I don't expect that for a few years, but I remember back to 2001 when interest rates went down below 1%, and less than 2 years later, they were up over 5%. So it's really kind of hard to project out more than 2 or 3 years accurately.
Bruce?
Mark, I guess looks like we were about 10% short on last year's reductions. Is that right? Missed the mark by 700K or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if we have similar experience with this year's round of reductions, I think that probably adds up to
close to $1 million.
Close to $1 million a year there. Strikes me we're probably not completely done with this this process. Is that fair to say? And I also look at your last graph, and you're right. The green line crosses in the 5th year, not the 4th year. So I think we're not done. Is that fair to say?
We're not completely out of the woods, but I feel, I mean, obviously I feel much better now than I did at the beginning of last year. But I
the
also,
line going up instead of down is certainly refreshing.
It's a good thing. But I would also say that, you know, my approach has always been to be, you know, pretty conservative in our projections, and I'm hoping that these projections are a little more conservative than what actually occurs. And, you know, with a little bit of luck, I think we'll be in a pretty good spot to maintain. You know, again, a lot of it depends on what happens in the economy 2, 3, 4 years out. But you know, I feel good about where we're at, and I think the emergency, if we make these adjustments, the emergency's over. We just need to be prudent as we move forward and make sure that we continue to work Goal 6 and make sure that everything we do is as efficient and as effective as we can be. So I feel like we're going to be in a good spot. But you're right. There's no guarantee we're not going to have to make some other adjustments in the future. We'll just kind of have to see what happens.
All right, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
I think maybe those 2 questions kind of lead into something we just want to take a few minutes to review. Paul, if you don't mind. Click. Yeah. We really have talked a lot the last, since I've been in the district, about Goal 6, but we've never really talked about what that may mean in terms of kind of a deeper meaning. And so going forth, and that's why your 2 questions were just kind of played into the response here. We aren't out of the woods, and but the wisdom of those people that were involved in Project Parkway to put Goal 6 into Project Parkway was really wonderful, in that it really does talk about the accountability of effectiveness and efficiency. So going forth, and I just want to just briefly just say, you know, I think it's to our benefit to study, for example, our current middle school model. And for example, we have a double communication arts, daily physical education and health. Not that those will go away, but it's time for us to look at the data. You know, have they really done what we wanted them to do? To look at interdisciplinary curriculum, and certainly the best use of instruction time for guaranteed curriculum, and certainly to have a rigorous middle school curriculum. Now, we want to do what's right for students, but in that there may be some greater efficiencies and effectiveness and some cost savings. Secondly, I think we want to spend some time looking at our high school. and the future of our 5 campuses. For example, we've already talked a little bit about extending learning beyond the current schedule, open enrollment allowing students to enroll among the campuses and in different courses, focus area high schools, career magnet schools, academies, and then certainly more virtual learning, and I have a virtual learning guide that would provide students with more online learning. Further study of current intervention programs. We've, I think, did a good job. Desi Kirchhoffer last year certainly looked thoroughly, but I think there's more work that could maybe be done to look more at a seamless intervention within our schedule to avoid some of the labels we have and really think about, and you heard PLC discussion tonight about, you know, all students being involved in interventions at all levels. Acceleration as well as extended learning, certainly looking at summer school, and then greater systematic approaches to how we look at intervention and have a greater accountability there. Look at extended day, academic day and year, really developing a clear philosophy of what we're really talking about when we talk about extended opportunities. Maybe a third semester for high school students and a 4th trimester for middle and elementary. We have a block of time sometimes that really would give us an opportunity, thinking of the summer, where we really could have more credit courses and more opportunities for all students. Summer academies and learning opportunities, and certainly again virtual learning to really extend learning. Ongoing Facilities 2020 discussion around learning space, size of schools, location of alternative programs, our administrative functions. Facilities 2020 have begun to look at those, but I think we have to get more serious about those as we think about our future in Parkway. And ensuring that co-curricular programs for all students expand human and financial resources effectively. We certainly have a wonderful co-curricular program, but again, as it really, they are all programs tied to our mission and vision. These are good ways to extend learning. Maybe there's some new ways, and maybe there's some things that we need to look at doing differently. Talk about career pathways, and certainly the expansion of something we've been talking a little bit about, and that is community education. So these are areas that I really think really start putting some meat on Goal 6. And we'll talk more about the timeline, which of these areas are really some areas that we need to undertake. But I don't think anybody on our budget committee, as we talked about these, disagrees that these are important areas to look at, both in terms of student learning, but also how we are certainly using our resources. So, other questions before we move on to our area meetings? Any questions at all? Beth?
The middle school model, the double Com Arts block, and the everyday health PE, those have been added to the model since I've been on the board, so within the last less than 5 years. So how much data do you need? How many years worth of data do you need to determine if something is going the right way?
Well, I think you by your question, I think it's time. I think we've had adequate time to start really collecting some data. So I think it's been busy about 5 years, or third year. So third year. So you know, perhaps another year, but maybe. But it's time, and we have some data we can begin to start collecting. So that's a great question.
Well, I guess just one comment for the area meetings. Maybe all hands should have a sit down with Sandy Collins, PLC from, was it the art ones, who were talking about teaching perspective. You might need that going into some of this. So. Just kidding.
Yeah, I understand.
What is it about that chair on the board?
It's the zeitgeist, right?
Well, we're you know, last year we committed to transparency. I think we spent a lot of time talking to a lot of groups last year. We're certainly trying to use these area meetings, and we certainly do hope we have people that do indeed come and ask questions and talk about our future and ask difficult questions. We're asking a lot of our members of our budget committee to be there, our administrators, our area administrators. So we certainly welcome citizens and taxpayers and parents to be there.
Can I ask how it's been advertised?
We've sent notices out to all faculty and staff probably 3 or 4 times, both in the electronic mail and through the newsletters. So we haven't done any paid advertising, if that's what you're asking.
Has it
PTO also?
I'm sorry?
What about the general public? Through their newsletters, maybe?
We haven't done any paid advertising in newspapers.
Are you going to send a blast out, an e-blast or something to, what is it called? Alert Now, or what do you call those email blasts?
Well, we've sent several out already, I guess is what I'm saying.
To
About the budget
parents.
meetings, yes,
Okay.
right.
How about
It
the
was-
Facebook page?
If we haven't already, we will. It's difficult.
I know, I know that.
But we hadn't planned on putting any paid advertising out for them. It's very expensive.
Anybody else?
Could anything be done through principals' newsletters?
Well, we have. We've sent them materials on it, sent them information to send out through their newsletters. And then through the district newsletter.
Do elementary schools still send Thursday papers home, that kind of thing, and with students?
Some do.
I think they send
They
stuff
do it electronically, they don't do as much.
It's kind of, it depends on the school
Yeah.
and the community. So,
Could principals send an e-blast?
they
You know,
can.
They can, maybe that's something to do, just a reminder to everyone from the schools. Yeah, so. Great.
Well, it sounds like you've already thought of everything.
Yeah, well.
Well,
It's just.
I mean, you could send a
People still
telephone
say
call
they
home.
didn't
The
know
only thing
about
we
it.
have not done is send a telephone call to every home, and you could do that. It's the only thing we've not done. We've done emails to every home.
Last week, in a meeting, Paul went over his FAQ that we all have in front of us, the screen sheet. And we presented it to a group of people who are communications experts. And we had them read it, do a cold read like our kids do, to see, check for understanding. And they made some really good comments, I think, from people who are a little, take a step back from the weeds. And they had some really good suggestions, questions that, perhaps somebody who's not been involved in the budget work would ask, that, maybe the answers could have been a little more direct or a little broader, whatever the case may be. So Paul has tightened up the FAQ, and I think if we can get people to really read these questions and read these answers, they'll have a really good understanding whether or not they can make it to the budget meeting. And if we get this information out through our schools, through the newsletters and electronically, I think you've really spelled it out very well now.
Well, we'll try to think of anything we haven't done to get it out there. I mean, we haven't made, mass copies and sent them out in hard copy, because so many of the schools now do electronic.
Right.
But,
Well, I think that's one of our greater efficiencies too. We've kind of made the commitment to not send paper home.
Well, and you have several reporters in the room tonight, and so I'm sure they're going to help us get the word out, hopefully. And hopefully they'll also mention the budget meetings coming up starting Monday. So.
Yeah.
What is the thought behind the reducing the textbook matrix? Is that we're just going to go longer with books, or are we going to look at online, and is online any cheaper? She looks mad.
That is part of the study that we are currently doing right now with social studies going through program eval, and you will get their program evaluation at the February meeting, and then ESOL coming up later in the spring. Toby and his teachers have done some extensive study in the different avenues of staying strictly traditional textbook, which we don't think will be responding to the ever-changing needs of the material and the process of our students learning, all the way to complete digital. And they are doing some price comparison now. I think it will depend on the content area, but we will see more and more migration towards flexible resources that can be more adaptive. I think that might also push us away from a strict 6-year cycle, because that's not being responsive to things as they change. So we've got to really rethink the traditional approach to allocation of textbook funds so that we can be responsive. Maybe not all curriculum areas need the same length of cycle. Does that make sense? So that's part of our study with that.
And the world changes very fast these days.
Yes,
So-
it does. And so much information is at our fingertips, and with our students bringing their own devices and having access, is it more about the process and the thinking of the disciplines? how is it that historians go about gathering their information and then thinking about it to be able to apply it, because their information is in their hand. So, and to all other content areas, not just social studies.
Thank you.
Well, I hadn't seen any numbers on the textbooks we buy, but having a child in college, I did read an article just today that said that college textbooks costs have gone up faster than medical expenses over the last 30 years.
Great.
If you can fathom that thought.
Great. Thanks for that.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else? Good job. Thank you very much.
Carol?
Okay, let's
Could you get a hard copy of this for me? They're, I think it'd be good background for me to have.
All right, we're going to go on now with 14.0 policy review. I'd like to call on Dr. Torgerson, please. Early retirement.
We need to think about the order we do this. Everyone's riveted about my policy review.
Wait, is the
Yeah.
I know I
the
am.
reporters are all making their exit.
Already closing up.
We have an early retirement benefit for the professional staff, for the teachers, and some of the timelines in that were coming to a point where we needed to do some review and some revision. When this policy was originally written, there was a multiplier in the Missouri retirement system, and it was to sunset this June 2013. And when all the teachers group and the administrators group were working on this, the thought was that we would know what was happening with that multiplier, and therefore the dates and times that were put into this board policy reflected that that's what the thinking was. Well, we know how legislators work. And of course, we're sitting here at a time where we need to be making some decisions, and we don't know what's going to happen with that multiplier, whether it's going to be renewed or whether it's going to sunset. So we worked with the teachers, the NEA group, and our suggestion is that the program, we would change, instead of saying the program will be in effect until June 30, 2013, we would change that to 2014, because that decision will be made and we'll know what's going on. Originally, we had a committee that got together, and we did have a committee that got together, but we're going to have another committee get together, and what we're setting it is that once the state legislature adjourns, we'll know what's going to happen with that multiplier. We will then be able to meet perhaps through the summer up through November 1st next year, and we'll be able to make a recommendation to the superintendent, and we'll be able to revise board policy at that time. So that's why we're suggesting making this change, so that we've extended the early retirement benefit for the teachers for another year, in hopes that we'll have that information and be able to do a little more long-term planning as we go forward.
Thank you. Any questions? No. All right. Thank you very much. 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've called for the 12th already, right? Okay. Okay. 15.0, call for a special meeting, none. 16.0, call for executive session on February 6, 2013. May I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education call for an executive session, including any record or vote, on Wednesday, February 6, 2013, at 6:30 p.m. and/or immediately following the regular meeting at Central Middle School, for the purpose of, number one, legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving the district, and any confidential or privileged communication between the district or its representatives and its attorneys, 610.021.1. 2, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees by the district when personal information about the employees discussed or recorded, 610.021.3. 3, individually identifiable personnel records performance ratings and records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment, 610.021.13.
So moved.
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Applebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Applebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mrs. Mogelman?
Yes.
Dr. Sutton?
Yes.
Mrs. Feldman?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. 17.0, recess. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn the regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you. At this time, we will adjourn.